Coming up on Arirang News. Amid continued Israeli strikes in the Gaza Strip, hundreds of foreign nationals and injured Palestinians are escaping the besieged enclave after the Rafah crossing with Egypt opened. The South Korean Foreign Ministry confirms 5 nationals have crossed the border into Egypt. The South Korean military believes North Korea supplies some 2,000 containers of munitions to Russia for use in its war against Ukraine. A military official says short-range ballistic missiles might have also been shipped to Moscow. South Korea sees its inflation speed up in October, rising on year by 3.8%, staying above 3% for a third month in a row, led by oil and agricultural products. The authorities say they'll go all out to stabilize prices. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. We start with the evacuation from Gaza. With the opening of the Rafah crossing with Egypt, injured Palestinians and those with foreign passports are escaping the enclave, including 5 Korean nationals who are confirmed to have entered Egypt. Hundreds left on the first day, and thousands more are expected to leave in the coming weeks. In the meantime, Israel continues its airstrikes on northern Gaza, where there's a refugee camp. Our Moon Hae-ryun leads us off.
Thousands more are expected to leave the besieged Gaza Strip over the coming weeks following the reopening of the Rafah crossing. Dozens of injured Palestinians crossed the border into Egypt on the first day of its opening on Wednesday. And over 320 foreign passport holders from the likes of Australia, Japan, the United Kingdom and the United States were also evacuated. South Korea's Ministry of Foreign Affairs confirmed that 5 South Korean nationals crossed the border into Egypt on Thursday morning local time. Patients who are unable to receive the necessary surgical treatment in Gaza are being treated in hospitals across Egypt. Officials expect some 7,500 more foreign passport holders to leave Gaza over the next 2 weeks, and those that have already crossed over are due to catch flights back to their home countries from Cairo. It's the first time that non-hostages were allowed out of Gaza since the war broke out 3 weeks ago, and ambulances and representatives from foreign embassies stood by the crossing to assist their nationals. The head of Gaza's media office was reported to have urged Egyptian authorities to keep the crossing open to allow for all humanitarian needs and life supplies, as well as fuel for hospitals and emergency services. This comes as the Hamas-run government in Gaza said at least 195 Palestinians were killed and 777 people were wounded in the strikes. The same strikes that Israel said had killed Hamas commanders in Gaza's biggest refugee camp in Jabalia on Wednesday. The combined Israeli and Palestinian death toll has now surpassed 10,000, with children making up a third. Global leaders and high-ranking government officials are stepping in to minimize civilian casualties, including U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who's due to visit Israel on Friday to meet with Israel's Prime Minister. The head of the United Nations Palestinian Refugee Agency was reported to have crossed into Gaza to meet with staff and described the current situation as unprecedented with unsanitary living conditions. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
South Korea's military officials say North Korea shipped some 2,000 containers of weapons to Russia for use in its war against Ukraine. On top of 1 million artillery shells since early August, there are signs that Pyongyang might have also provided Moscow with short-range ballistic missiles. Our defense correspondent Choi Min-jung reports.
South Korea has also accused North Korea of shipping military equipment to Russia, following similar accusations recently made by the U.S. and Ukraine. A military official on Thursday said that it estimates a total of 2,000 containers have been shipped to Russia from North Korea's port city of Najin, close to the border with Russia. The official explained that the containers are capable of loading more than 200,000 rounds of 122mm artillery shells and over 1 million rounds of 152mm shells. Apart from rocket launchers, shells, and artillery, the military also noted that there are indications of the transfer of short-range ballistic missiles. The official also noted that there have been indications of the North's supply of weapons to Russia even before Kim Jong-un visited Russia in September, as their arms trade via sea has picked up pace since August. The military anticipates that in return for weapons, North Korea will likely gain Russia's assistance in satellite technology, potentially to prepare for its third attempt at launching a spy satellite. The North may also receive necessities like food and fuel to get through the upcoming winter. The two sides are also anticipated to discuss potential joint military exercises in the future. South Korea is calling for the immediate halt of the arms transfer, saying it is a clear violation of UN Security Council resolutions and seriously threatens the peace and stability of the Korean peninsula and the world. Choi Min-jang, Arirang News.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has signed a law to revoke Russia's ratification of a treaty that bans nuclear tests. On Thursday, an official website of the Russian government posted the decree to revoke the comprehensive nuclear test ban treaty that taken immediate effect. Moscow claims it had done so to be on equal footing with the United States, which has signed but not ratified the treaty, and that it would not conduct any tests until Washington does. However, some experts are concerned that this could lead to nuclear tests by Russia as an intimidation tactic against Ukraine. South Korean President Yoon is expected to push for global cooperation to develop new standards to govern artificial intelligence, which 28 governments, including the UK, the US, and China on Wednesday, agreed could be catastrophic to the world if not managed properly. Our presidential correspondent Oh Soo-young has the details.
President Yoon is set to call for global standards on digital governance and a body that oversees it, as leading IT nations sign the world's first global declaration on ensuring artificial intelligence is developed safely and responsibly. South Korea's presidential office says Yoon will attend day 2 of the first AI safety summit being held in Bletchley Park, southeast England, during which 28 governments, including South Korea, the UK, the United States and China, penned the so-called Bletchley Declaration. Recognizing that the technology could pose catastrophic risk to humanity, the countries jointly called for AI to be designed, developed and used in ways that are human-centric, trustworthy and responsible. The 2-day summit brings together governments, politicians, scientists and tech executives to address growing concerns over the unknown and potentially destabilizing impact of AI across societies.
We can't expect these companies to mark their own homework. Now, that has to be the responsibility of governments. That's why I've created the AI Safety Institute here in the UK, which I hope can be a globally leading institute to research the safety of these models.
Without oversight and management, governments fear the fast-evolving technology poses substantial risk to individual privacy, safety and national security. In particular, the declaration underscores the danger of AI systems, stirring further cyber attacks, disinformation campaigns, and even the development of biological weapons. The governments agreed to work together to identify shared concerns and build a scientific understanding of the risks in discussions going forward. They also endorsed a pro-innovation and proportionate governance that maximizes the benefits while considering the risks associated with AI. Adding to the conversation, the South Korean leader is expected to share his ideas on fostering global cooperation to meet the challenges of the new digital age. Before joining the summit, Yoon spoke to a Korean broadcaster Thursday, reiterating his views on AI governance.
AI와의 디지털 기술이 우리의 자유와 민주주의를 확장시키는 데 활용이 되어야지 이것이 자유와 민주주의를 훼손하고 억압하는 쪽으로 쓰여서는 안 된다는 그런 원칙을 가져야 되고, 우리도 그래서 그 AI 디지털 시대에 우리가 어떻게 해야 하는지에 관한 대한민국 차원에서의 권리 장전을 발표를 했고.
Over the past year, Yoon has stressed the need to create a new digital order and establish appropriate governance over technology in his keynote speeches at New York University, Sorbonne University and the UN General Assembly. His office says South Korea and the UK have agreed to co-host a mini virtual summit in 6 months' time, prior to the second AI Safety Summit this time next year. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
The U.S. Central Bank has left its key interest rate steady for a second straight time at its current 22-year high amid the resilient American economy. An Sung-jin explains its implications for Korea.
The U.S. Federal Reserve has decided to maintain interest rates in the 5.25% to 5.5% range. This was the second consecutive meeting after September where the FOMC held rates steady at a 22-year high. The decision is mostly attributed to a slowdown in inflation as the Consumer Price Index recorded an on-year decrease, while the U.S. economy has been growing at a constant pace over the past month, potentially increasing the growth rate to the 2% range. An increase in the government bond rates also reduced the need for additional interest rate hikes by the Fed, as borrowing costs for households and businesses rose.
Recent indicators suggest that economic activity has been expanding at a strong pace and well above earlier expectations.
The Fed's second straight pause follows a series of rate hikes over the previous year and a half, including 4 in 2023, as the committee fought to tame high inflation. Though inflation has cooled since last summer when prices peaked at a high unseen in nearly 4 decades, inflation is still lingering above the Fed's target of 2% per year, hinting that a future hike may be needed.
The process of getting inflation sustainably down to 2% has a long way to go. We'll be looking at all those things as we make a decision in December. We haven't made that decision.
The latest decision also means that the rate gap between South Korea and the U.S. will remain in the 1.75 to 2 percentage points range, as the Bank of Korea has kept its benchmark rate at 3.5% for nearly a year. This rate difference prompts concerns over the South Korean won-U.S. dollar exchange rate, as inflation remains high in South Korea due to an increase in the price of petroleum and agricultural products.
As the US froze its interest rates, the burden caused by the difference has been somewhat reduced. But even so, the gap is not small. So if this extends, there will be a lot of risks like capital outflow, with the US becoming more foreign investment friendly.
He also added that the interest rate gap would not last forever, which is why it is necessary to also watch for increased household debt ahead of the upcoming central bank meeting. As the U.S. has maintained its interest rate, there is a high chance that the Bank of Korea will also hold its rate. However, as the responses for increased inflation and higher debt differ, this may change how the benchmark rates for the two countries will unfold. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
South Korea sees its inflation speed up in October, rising on-year by 3.8%, staying above 3% for a third month in a row, led by oil and agricultural products. Authorities vow to go all out to keep prices in check. Our Park Gon-woo reports.
South Korea's consumer prices saw another on-year jump in October. According to Statistics Korea on Thursday, the Consumer Price Index, a key gauge of inflation, increased 3.8% on-year last month. That was the third consecutive month it has seen a rise of over 3%. The numbers surged even more in October as costs for agricultural goods, industrial products, services, and energy all went up. While petroleum product prices have been dropping since July, a shallower fall in October has been attributed to higher consumer prices overall. Agricultural goods unexpectedly saw the biggest percentage rise since May 2021, jumping 13.5%.
Normally, costs of agricultural goods, especially vegetables, tend to fall in October from September as weather conditions ease. But it was different this year due to abnormal temperatures.
In an emergency economic meeting held on Thursday, Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho also mentioned consumer prices, which are expected to go down at a slower pace due to factors including geopolitical risks and abnormally low temperatures. But he also said the government will prioritize stabilizing consumer prices. And with kimchi making season approaching, he spoke of ways to keep the price of ingredients under control.
We will do our very best with discounts and expanding supplies to keep kimchi making costs lower than last year.
He promised the largest ever package to keep the price of kimchi making ingredients stable, pledging some 24.5 billion Korean won, or roughly $18 million in monetary support. Also, to relieve the burden of living expenses, he said the government will give out energy cost discounts and cashback to lessen heating bills, particularly for vulnerable social groups. Park Gon-woo, Arirang News.
The 2023 K-Startup Grand Challenge event that started on October 31st wrapped up its run on Thursday. This event was founded in 2016 by the Ministry of SMEs and Startups to help startups worldwide that wanted to grow their businesses in South Korea. This year, 49 global teams selected from among almost 2,000 startup applicants were given the chance to participate in the Business Acceleration Program. The global participants, including startups in the fields of artificial intelligence, e-business, and green technology, received support and advice from South Korean companies. At an award ceremony on the last day, the top 20 performers were rewarded with additional follow-up support to run their businesses in Korea. The government has been eyeing the Middle East for business opportunities, with President Yoon most recently carrying out state visits to Saudi Arabia and Qatar. Our economics correspondent, Lee Soo-jin, tells us what South Korean companies are doing and what else needs to be done.
Interest in the Middle Eastern market is currently very high in South Korea. The country's trade volume with Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Qatar jumped 63.1% on year in 2022 compared to the 12.3% increase with the world. While the first Middle East boom mostly involved construction orders, the second includes various new industries. One company, Planty Farm, has already secured deals in a major new industry that the Middle East is seeking to grow: smart farms. Planty Farm became the first company from Korea to build a smart farm in Kuwait and more recently formed a joint venture with a UAE firm to begin construction on one. Countries in the Middle East are taking a special interest in South Korea's smart farming technology as it's one of the most water-stressed regions in the world. The vertical smart farms like this one can mass-produce vegetables all year regardless of the weather. These plants, grown on vertically stacked racks, don't need natural sunlight, soil, or water, thanks to the LED grow lights and sensors that control water pH and humidity levels. But there's still much left to do.
We need to keep doing market research to find what people need, and right partner and customer also need to keep developing, expanding our lineup. Most of Korean agtech companies are relatively small businesses, so they need financial support.
While the MOUs indicate strong interest in conducting business with South Korea, further steps need to be taken to create real economic value.
It is necessary for Korean government to provide diplomatic backups, since Middle East countries pay relatively more attention to diplomatic and religious justification in economic partnership.
It's also important for South Korea to be aware that other major economies are vying to win contracts in the Middle East. The experts said that in the competition against Chinese firms, companies should emphasize their past success with industrial development, and against U.S. firms, the price competitiveness and quality assurance. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
South Korea's Asiana Airlines has decided to sell off its cargo business, clearing a major hurdle for its proposed takeover by Korean Air. The country's second-largest air carrier said on Thursday that its board had agreed on the plan to sell its cargo business that'll help Korean Air win the European Commission's approval for the takeover. The move is to ease monopoly concerns raised by the European Union's antitrust regulator, which in May initially rejected the merging of Korea's top full-service air carriers, citing it would limit competition in passenger and cargo services between Europe and South Korea. The sale is expected to help speed up Korean Air's acquisition process, as the EU's decision is likely to affect those of the US and Japan, whose approval Korean Air still needs. Today, South Korea and the OECD launched a cooperative mechanism called the Asia Public Service Network to synchronize cooperation in human resources management in the Asian region. As our Lee Si-hoo reports, this comes as new challenges as well as opportunities emerge in the digital transformation era.
South Korea's Ministry of Personnel Management will play a leading role in public sector human resources management in the Asia region during this ongoing era of digital transformation. This is according to Minister Kim Seung-ho at a launch ceremony held in Seoul on Thursday for a network between South Korea and the OECD that will be the basis for cooperation in this sector.
Korea is leading the world in many fields, and the sector of personnel administration is no exception. Korea's personnel management system, especially the electronic system, is nearly the best among OECD members, so many countries are trying to benchmark it. It is in this situation that the OECD decided it would be good to share Korea's advanced system with Southeast Asian countries, so we collaborated with the OECD to launch this personnel administration network for the first time ever.
Minister Kim says Seoul's strength in IT allows for an all-electronic process in hiring, training, and even retirement. Another strength, its fairness.
Inequality in the recruitment system leads to corruption in the country, but almost every part of South Korea's recruitment system is actually managed very strictly, from the exam or interview questions to the announcement.
The theme for the launch ceremony was leading the public sector in the era of digital transformation, culture, technology, HRM. Representatives from 13 Asian countries discussed the need for cooperation to overcome any crisis they could face and secure new opportunities.
We have essentially an incredible number of people at the senior levels in governments that are retiring from government across the region. At the same time, we have all of these developments with technology occurring at the same time, and how to leverage this opportunity to truly transform the public service. There has never been an opportunity before quite like this before.
Following a meeting with the Singapore delegation, Minister Kim signed a memorandum of cooperation with the top representative of Thailand, promising mutual cooperation. On Friday, the minister will have a meeting with his counterpart from the Philippine Civil Service Commission to seek ways to cooperate. Lee Si-hoo, Arirang News.
This morning, Japan began to release its third batch of wastewater from the destroyed Fukushima nuclear power plant into the Pacific Ocean. The plant operator, the Dokyu Electric Power Company, plans to discharge 7,800 tons of the treated wastewater by November 20th. TEPCO released the same amount of water in each of the two earlier discharges. In response, the South Korean government explained Thursday that it has sent a team of monitoring experts to Fukushima to make sure that the third batch is released properly. This is the fifth time that the government has sent experts to the site since Dokyu began the discharge process. About 1.3 million tons of wastewater is stored in tanks at the nuclear power plant, and Japan aims to release 31,200 tons of this by March next year. Shifting gears, an institution that supports SMEs in South Korea has signed a deal with 3 domestic biotech companies that'll see a technology handover to aid with future research. The deal was signed on Thursday between the Gyeonggi-do Business and Science Accelerator and the 3 firms, Rappler, SI Bio, and Next Farm Korea. A total of 3 technologies will be transferred through this deal, and research cooperation will enable the development of new drugs and health functional products. Among the technologies being transferred is one that can be used in anti-obesity treatment and was verified in the international science journal Nature Chemical Biology back in 2016.
Overall readings will drop a tad, but they will still be warmer than the seasonal average. For Seoul, maximum temperatures will be hiking up to 21 degrees Celsius, which is about 5 degrees higher than average. Southern parts of the country, such as Cheongju and Pohang, will see even warmer conditions. Some regions will be under rainy spells tomorrow. As for the amount of rainfall, the Seoul metropolitan area in Gangwon-do province will see 5 to 20, Chungcheong-do 5 to 10 millimeters. Jeollado province can expect about 5 millimeters. And gusty winds are in the forecast for most inland regions tomorrow. For regions with higher elevation, such as mountainous areas of Gangwon-do province, winds will become more violent, so please secure any items that could get blown away. Morning temperatures in Seoul and Busan will be starting off at 17 degrees Celsius. As for the daily highs, Seoul will get up to 21 degrees, Gwangju 24, Gyeongju will be very warm at 26 degrees. Showers will be coming and going until next Monday, and after the rain, much colder temperatures will be settling in. That's all for now, and here are the weather conditions around the world.
Well, that brings an end to tonight's newscast. Thank you for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with the latest news. Good night.